Howdy, everybody. Welcome to today's episode number 2 of Ask Uncle Jonathan. I almost said Ask Junkle. It could be a new word. This is the second episode, so I apologize. I had a lightning strike here at my bunker, and it fried the motherboard on my computer. And I've also been doing a bit of general procrastinating. So I'm back. And let's get down to today's topic. Is Pearl Davis for real? So first, let's start off with who is Pearl Davis. Well, for the uninitiated, gotta get something going here. For the uninitiated, Pearl is a 26-year-old YouTuber who was also prominent from posting a lot of her tweets. Now, she has become quite controversial and gained a following. She currently is at 325,000 followers in a little bit over a year and a half, not even a year and a half, on Twitter. She is 26 years old. She claims to have 1.7 million on YouTube and claims to be banned at banned on TikTok. So what is Pearl known for? Pearl is known for unapologetically taking some of the probably most, how would I describe it? What's a word for unexpected? Some of the most, I guess you could say, paradoxical views that you might expect from a young 26-year-old female in today's world. Pearl has taken some positions such as women should not vote. Most women these days are, her language, fat whores. Anyone with a body count over 1 is a whore. Oh gosh, let's see here. I'm just going to scroll through some of her tweets. She's the church, the modern Christian church, has feminized men. And women are dumb. Men are smarter than women, and women should be submissive to men. So you can only imagine the Pearl has hit the internet in the last year or so like a wrecking ball. And some people have wondered, is she doing a bit of a grift here, or is she simply playing a character for commercial gain? I do not think so. So I might say some things here that are going to upset some people. That's fine. This is a conversation for deep thinkers and people with the intellectual capability to be objective. And Pearl has articulated some things that I've come to realize in the last few years myself, which is love is simply enough. If we can even define it, liking someone isn't enough to make for a successful relationship and to keep things on the rails. As culture has become more and more permissive, which started before I was born, but yet I've seen it become even more so in many ways since I have been. It seems like the more we try to be equal, the more we keep getting hit in the face with the reality that there are certain differences between men and women that just cannot be ignored. Pearl is very fact driven and logical. Um, Almost to a level that would, almost make you think she might be a man, or I'll be honest, even on the spectrum sometimes, because the way she says things without regard for the social consequences, which for most people is very difficult. If you are a normal socialized person, you can see things that are obvious, but you don't say them, or you don't say them as bluntly, right? Because you know how the reaction is going to be socially. The story of the emperor has no clothes is a fable that illustrates this point, right? Nobody wants to be that asshole that stands up and says the obvious. Everyone can see that the emperor is mad and is naked. What good comes out of me being the guy to stand up in the crowd and point that out? Well, as the fable goes, there comes a point where we can all subconsciously move from being polite to being deluded. And Pearl thinks this is where our society has gone when it comes to the relations between men and women, that we have gone from being polite to being deluded. Now, she's very right. One of the themes she's been talking on a lot is that 100 years ago, a woman with a body count more than one would be considered a whore. I think she's extremely blunt about that, but she does have a point. It would not make for an optimal situation with most people that have options, men and women. Most women would be looking for a man with a good family, obviously an ability to provide for one. And the men would also be looking for traits and things that would make a woman a good prospect for a wife. And one of those things would probably be that she has not slept with the entire town. We have become more permissive. I think largely in the idea of being more polite. We understand now that things happen. We understand that you might not end up dating, or you might not end up marrying, you might not end up marrying your college sweetheart or your high school sweetheart. You might realize that it was a mistake. We realize that you might get married and get divorced. You might have kids. The window has pushed more and more. And I don't think those are necessarily bad things. I think there's a lot of good people that are not virgins when they get married. I think there's a lot of good people that have been divorced. But we've taken the exception to the rule. And we have, in the name of politeness or feminism, if you want to call it that, or equality, taken it and pushed it from where we're not overlooking the exceptions, but we're grappling with this being the norm. So, I mean, an illustration might be somebody getting caught up in the legal system. Maybe somebody had too much to drink and they made a mistake where they drove home and they shouldn't have. Or they made a mistake and they got drunk and posted something online that they shouldn't have. Or they made an angry remark to somebody that they shouldn't have. That was perceived as a threat. Right? Does our legal system not look at somebody and say, well, this seems to be a one-off event. It's not like I have a courtroom full of people, which this is not a good example because there are a lot of people get caught for this with the enforcement. But even our legal system tries, and maybe this is part of the problem too, in the past would look at somebody and say, well, this doesn't seem to be your normal pattern of behavior. Seems like you had a really bad day, and unfortunately, you ended up here in the courtroom. But as many things in our society, as we kind of enter this weird time where we're not sure if we're collapsing or what's going on, it has become a bit of a delusion. What were exceptions are now the norm. So maybe a better analogy would be like, well, today I ate ice cream. As a matter of fact, being Labor Day, I've been hitting the gym real hard. And I've been trying to watch what I eat. And I think I've done pretty good. I've lost a few pounds, gained a lot of muscle in the last few months. And for breakfast, I had 4 cupcakes. And for lunch, I had 2 ice cream cones and those drumstick ones that come in the box. They're so tasty. And I think I had 2 more for dinner. So my entire diet today has been cupcakes and ice cream. Now, am I proud of it? No. But it's an exception. I don't eat like that every day. I may look like it, but I don't. And I am okay with not being too proud of this because I know it's an exception. I know tomorrow morning I'm going to wake up and I'm going to eat better. I know after this podcast, I'm probably going to go to the gym. Could also say maybe drinking. You might have gotten drunk last night because it's a holiday weekend. But it's exception, right? Maybe you only get that way about 3 or 4 times a year. You're okay with it. You had the day off. You're going to rest, recover, and things will be back to normal tomorrow. But what happens when the exceptions become the norm? What happens if my diet is like it was today every day? What happens if you went out and drank last night and drinking like that becomes every night, even just every weekend? It doesn't take long for the consequences to add up. So I think what Pearl is trying to say is that we've become deluded as a society, that we used to be permissive about these exceptions, divorce, having children out of wedlock, having multiple partners before we marry. Now these things have become the norm. And she'll cite a lot of statistics that are pretty true about how few women are virgins on their wedding night, about how many partners most women have. Now, I think a lot of that is the age. And this is one thing I've always been on, is that women are waiting so long now before they even think about getting married, that there's a gap there where you're going to have multiple partners. You have someone who is in the prime of their reproductive years, not settling down with a mate and not engaged in the process of raising children. And unless she is, a nun, she is going to have relationships and she is going to have sexual partners. Now, a lot of this is due to birth control. Birth control has allowed women to stretch out that period to where they can have a time, usually in their early 20s, where they can have relationships, and then later they still have the opportunity to get married. And used to be, it stretched that out from, around 18, I would say, to, early 20s, a few years, maybe enough time to finish college. Now it's become, maybe in their mid 20s, late 20s. Now we're heading into 30s, mid 30s. And what a lot of women are finding is that they're deeply unsatisfied with their options when they do get to that point. And I think, in a way, Pearl is pointing out that we have jumped the shark from permissiveness to delusion. Now, there's other factors here. That's what happens when I talk too much. There's other factors, like some people call it third wave feminism. So, when I was young, a feminist meant someone that believed in equality, believed that, a man should not look down on a woman simply because she's a woman, that a woman should be given the same opportunities that a man should. And that means, basically just not discriminating against somebody solely because they're a woman. I never saw a problem with that, to be honest. I don't think anybody should be discriminated against things. Now, at my height, which is about 5'10", am I ever going to be an NBA basketball player? No, I don't think it's discrimination. But there are players that have been shorter than me that have made a career out of it. So it's not obvious to me that a proclivity based on my immutable characteristics necessarily guarantee or can disregard. So let's say a firefighter. If you're a 5 foot tall woman that weighs 100 pounds, are you likely to be a firefighter? Probably not. But you know what? I bet there are 5 foot women, if they set their mind to it, they can be. So I don't have a problem with it. And there could be situations where that's necessary. As a man, am I likely to end up being a school nurse for a elementary school or daycare? Probably not. But I do think it could be within my capabilities if I wanted to, or found the work interesting, or found it was needed on a serious level in my community. So for someone to tell me, no, we really need a school nurse, but you're a man and we're not even going to let you through the door, yeah, I would find that disturbing. And I can see how a woman would find that disturbing too if she found something that she was interested in or found something needed, or if it was a job that met her needs for whatever reason, to simply be discriminated against by being a woman. But these are exceptions we're talking about. Generally, men and women are very predictable as far as what they're interested in. Men tend to be interested in things, work, that maybe doesn't require as much social skill, but requires more technical skill. Women are more social creatures, and they are more attracted to the nurturing and the fields that have more to do with social and relational connections. So, where was I going with this? So that was my understanding of feminism, right? That if a woman wanted to work in an occupation that was outside of what we would classically think as a job for a woman, that she should be allowed to. Basically, women should be allowed to be more than nurses, maids, and housekeepers, right? And at some point, we seem to have crossed into a place where, and I think this is where third wave feminism comes in, to where women were perpetual victims of society, of the patriarchy, of this, of that. And then there was intersectional feminism. Well, I'm a woman and I'm this. I'm a woman, and just breaking themselves down into these categories to where they just become, I call it the victim Olympics, right? Like, oh, well, you're missing a leg. Well, look at me. I'm missing a leg and an arm. You've been discriminated against because you're of your race. Well, I'm discriminated against because of my gender and my race and the neighborhood I grew up in. Oh, you? Well, I'm discriminated. You can see where this goes. It never, ever ends. We can always break it down. And then we can argue about who has it rougher, the person who's discriminated by their race or by their gender. So third wave feminism tries to unite all these factions by saying that the patriarchy is the problem. It really conjures and is based on a contempt for men. And Pearl's position is that this is completely insane. This is completely dumb. And it's completely antisocial or contrary to having a functional society. As she points out, who made sure your lights turned on today? It wasn't a podcaster. Who made sure that the water ran in your pipes this morning when you took a shower? It wasn't an Instagram model. These are men that typically get up and get the job done and build homes, clean pipes, wire electrical, and do all those things, pave roads. And she's right. And then on the other side, you have a cultural rot where men just have no value. Everything is about the woman. And you see people say things like, women are the future. So I do believe that we have absolutely gone from politeness to delusion. And I'm glad somebody like Pearl is pointing it out. I think the divorce rates are record high. The children being born without fathers is record high. And somebody has to point it out. I firmly believe that the root of all these problems are children without fathers. And I've had kind of come across a theory or an epiphany, maybe you might say, in the last couple of years. And I can tell you my circle of friends, and this, I'm not saying anybody's bad or good, but I can pretty much tell after hanging out with a guy once or twice if he had his father around growing up. You can tell. There's a difference. And even though it's a little bit more rare, unfortunately, you can tell the women that had their father around too. There's something in the way that obviously that we develop that I'm not an expert on. And we need two parents. We need both of our parents. Even if we don't have the best relationship with them, it's still better. And you can read all statistics about, prisoners and all other types of poor outcomes, or correlations, might I say, just based on people from single parent homes. And when you look at it, well, 99% of people with single parent homes were raised by their mother. So if you look at it that way, the culture that we have spits out people, men and women, that have a bond with their mother. They can empathize with their mother. They saw their mother struggle with things. They saw the good, the bad, and the ugly of their mother. They have a complete picture of a mother, which is honestly the blueprint for their understanding of women or of themselves, if they are a woman, that goes on. But what about those without a father? There's nothing. Or maybe a little sketch because he left when they were young, or he's emotionally distant. So what that means is we have a society that everyone, I'm speaking generally, can empathize with their mother. But only the few, only very few can empathize with and understand men, or even try to. We'll never fully understand each other, but you know what I'm saying. Everyone has a mama. And what I think that's led to is the reason these ideas that men are valueless and the degrading of men can take hold is because you don't have people that can go, wait a second, that's not true. My father was a great guy. You know, he wasn't the CEO of IBM, but he worked hard. And he was there for us, and there's things that my father brought that only he could bring. See, those ideas can't take hold if somebody knows their father, if somebody has a good relationship with their father. It can't be, you can't spread those lies. Just like, how could I sit here and say all women are horrible, all women are trash, you know, any woman that's ever, you know, women are valueless. They, you know, that if you try to say that to men, you're going to get pushed back real quick. Somebody's going to tell you that you're full of shit. Somebody's going to tell you, hang on a second. My mother was the greatest woman I ever know. Let me tell you about what my mother did. Let me tell you what my mom accomplished and what she did for me and my brothers and sisters. Right? Because there's enough men out there that know their mother and saw her worth that they know what that's like. I think Pearl makes a lot more sense in a lot of her videos, and her, she just started doing spaces. Maybe a little bit of her tweets are a little bit meant to be inflammatory. But she is the one calling out that the emperor has no clothes, and that what we have here, that where we're going is not to a good place. We have now, if you think about it, 2 or 3 generations of women. You have women now out there that were raised by women that didn't know their fathers, raised by women that did not know their fathers. Hell, I'm sure in some places you could say it's 4 generations. As we became more understanding and permissive of divorce, of children being born out of wedlock, of degrading slowly over time the role of the man, the role of the husband and the father in the home, degrading that value. You now literally have women, you have to go back 2 or 3 generations to find somebody in a family line that had a nuclear family that grew up with a father and a mother. You have women out there now that was the way grandpa or great grandpa and grandma lived. So as we become more and more distant, I think the problems become more and more real. And I think Pearl has a place. I think Pearl is saying some things that need to be said. I think there are things that only Pearl can say that can make some people think. And she goes into a lot of other topics, but in all, Pearl is a deep thinker. Pearl is trying to be as logical and as unemotional about these issues as possible. And it's very interesting. To me, it's encouraging to see a young woman, in her mid-20s, thinking deeply about such things. I think more people would be better off if they did. And so that's my take on Pearl. Is Pearl for real? Unfortunately, all you third-wave feminists and beta males, I think she is. And she'll probably be giving a lot of you a lot of sleepless nights if you let her get to her. But I say, give her a chance. Be open-minded. People viscerally react to her. And when you viscerally react to something, I think that's that is a time to think about it. That is a time to steel man the argument on the other side and see if you might find just a little validity. Nobody knows everything and nobody's right all the time. But if you think and you listen, sometimes you might find just a little pearl, no pun intended, of wisdom that you can take with you. Maybe it'll improve your life. All right. Well, I'm getting sleepy, so I'm not going to do any crazy Reddit questions or anything tonight. By the way, there is an Ask Uncle Jonathan Reddit page. And we are on Twitter. The royal we, at, what is my handle here? Not my, Uncle Jonathan TV. There you go. So tweet at me. Tell me how much I suck. Tell me how much I'm awesome. I don't care. I really don't. It's the internet. And I'd like to ask questions. I'd like to, do more of a Q&A. I can't resist. I cannot resist. All right, let's do something off of Twitter here. Oh, let's do an Am I the Asshole? Oh, here we go. Ooh, this one says NSF. Hopefully it's not too long. That is too long. I don't want one that long. My eyes are getting tired. I don't know why my eyes get tired as soon as I start streaming. And I've been procrastinating. I just need to start podcasting every day. Okay, let me find some more. This is one of my favorite Reddits, though. Am I the Asshole? Or AITAH. Dun, dun, dun. Why does everybody have to go long? I don't know why you can't just put it. Why people can't just make it succinct. Oh, here we go. Okay, this is shorter. Am I the asshole for being upset he told me I need to work out if I want to have a baby? Oh, context. I, 30-year-old female, have been wanting children since I was 23. He, 31 male, might not be ready yet. We've been together almost 8 years and married for 3. I asked about pregnancy and marriage at 25. Hang on, let's do some quick math here. They've been together for 8. She's 30, so she asked about pregnancy and marriage at 25. So what, 3 years into this relationship, she brings up pregnancy and marriage. And he said maybe in 2 years. We did get married 2 years later, So I gave it another 6 months, and he said we can't compromise, and we can compromise and get a puppy and revisit children another 2 years. She's a little rascal, and we love her so much. We've had to learn to care for her together, but separately with our different work schedules, and have had some rough patches about whose turn it is to take her out, but she's well cared for. We've had her for 2 years now. Last week, I brought up children again, and he gets kind of rigid and says, you'll have to do crunches every day if you want to handle giving birth. Oh, shit. I'm in decent shape, though I've gained about 30 pounds from the tiny 145-pound 22-year-old girl he met. But I'm vain enough that I still look good. I eat right, intermittently exercise plus. My lady lumps are gorgeous now, and I'm happy with my body. He's a home gym junkie, and when home, if he isn't playing video games, he's working out. So that comment just rubbed me wrong and came off to me like he was either finding another excuse since he isn't ready, or is unhappy with my weight gain over the last 7.5 years and not sure how to tell me. So it came out organically. I got upset. We argued for a bit, so I took our Lacey girl for a walk shortly after to cool off. He thought I gave him the cold shoulder, so we were awkward the rest of the day. I love him so much, and we have created a fulfilling life together. We're speaking to each other and eating and everything like normal, but I can't help but wonder if I'm blowing this out of proportion or if he was being hurtful. He's not usually callous, but it was last week, so obviously it's still in my mind, and I'm still feeling hurt about it. Too long to read. My husband told me I have to do crunches every day if I want a baby, and I got upset. Am I the asshole? Yes and no. So, problem you have is a problem a lot of women have. A lot of people have, but this becomes very problematic between men and women. He can't tell you the truth, Ms. Recent Sweet 6242, because you'll get upset. And I mean, this is just what a lot of men figure out very early. Now, I would say it does sound like he's not as satisfied with your weight as your appearance as he could be. Now, does that make him an asshole? Probably. But there's obviously something going on here, and he can't talk to you openly about it. Having a dog is not the same as having a child. And on his end, I actually had this situation a few years ago with somebody I'm close to. It was a woman, and she had been married for about a decade. She got married very, very young, right out of high school, 18, 19, somewhere around that point, maybe 20. I don't know. And, she's getting close to 30, about this age where it's, used to be women would have already had 2 or 3 children by then. But, I understand times have changed, and that's kind of the window where the ship is getting ready to leave the port. And you got to get serious about it if you want to have children for most people. And when she got married at 19, her husband told her that he did not want kids. And her being 19 and very young said, neither do I. And then after 10 years of marriage, she was no longer 19. She was now 29 or 30. And the idea of being childless her whole entire life was not the same. Long story short, she changed her mind. And it started to put distance between them, this issue. And she asked me what I thought she should do. I don't know. She may not have even asked me. I might have just told her. My advice was not to try to change this person. And, just you're young enough to call it quits. I usually do not encourage people to get divorced, but I think this is a major decision. If you have one person that really wants kids and the other person is just, and y'all have had this discussion several times and it's very clear where the lines are, I think it might be okay to consider doing it a do-over. And I think that might be one of the few grounds outside of breaking your vows where I would understand if somebody wanted to end a relationship. And I would assume that, while it's probably not a pleasant thing, that both sides could see the value in it for each other. I mean, you don't want to be married to someone who's going to resent you for not ever having children. And then you don't want to, on the other hand, you don't want to be locked in a marriage with somebody that you always resent because they didn't have children with you. So I think the problem here starts at the very beginning. She dated this person for 2 or 3 years without ever having this conversation. And maybe this goes into what we started off in with Pearl, which was, we lie to ourselves, and I was young once, and you kind of think that these things are just going to happen. And there was a time when they kind of did. When I was younger, people would usually get in long-term relationships, and things would just kind of work out, and then somebody gets pregnant, and then you say, well, I'm going to do the right thing and get married. And I think that's how a lot of my friends ended up getting married when I was younger. They just got a long-term relationship, somebody's pregnant, and it was the right thing. And now it's not really like that anymore, but it did just gotta happen. Today, I think things are just getting delayed more and more and more and more. And we see these problems. And I think you really have to. If I was talking to somebody who was young, sorry, lady, I can't help you much with your situation. But talking to like a younger audience, I would say, you really have to think about what you want and be open to things changing. I personally think as a man, to marry someone in their 20s, even I don't care what a woman tells me, I feel like I would have to be prepared for her to want children. I think it would be as responsible and honestly unhonorable as many things could be. I think, if you really want somebody who doesn't want more children, date somebody already with children. That's the only way you can be positive. And even then, there's some people that want more children. But if you're really a guy that doesn't want children, you can't believe things so much changes for a woman from the time she's 19 or 20 to the time she's 30. And I really think probably 25 is a little bit more, about the point where a lot of women should start figuring it out, what they want. I think that's a good age. But to date somebody for 2 or 3 years and then to marry them, and to be that far along in the game and not have had this conversation or not have sorted things out, I think that's a big problem. And I think that's really at the root of things, because now it's like, well, he wants to, and that is kind of a rude comment, to tell somebody they need to have crunches again, Pearl talks about this, and this is what a lot of men do, and they don't want to be alone, and they just get comfortable and they just go in cruise control. And he's thinking about it as, well, if she wants something, then I want something back in return. All right, I'll have a kid if you get hot and get in shape again. Well, that's a horrible reason to agree to be a father. Horrible, horrible reason. Time is coming for all of us. We can try to hold it off. We can hit the gym. There's nothing wrong with eating right, dieting, trying to look the best you can. But at the end of the day, we're all going to end up being a bag of bones buried 6 feet deep. It's all in vain, but not meaning it's not something we shouldn't pursue, but you can't make it the end all be all. I mean, this guy's an opportunity to be a father, to probably do the most important thing that he could ever do in his life. And he's reduced it down to a bargaining chip to get his wife to do more exercise. Which you say she was? A tiny 145, 22-year-old? Well, I don't know if I'd call that tiny, but, if she's of average height, then, that could be a good good appearance. But, that's not even the point. That's superficial. Everybody's going to gain weight. You get married. It happens to most people. But just the whole thing of like, why is he using that as a bargaining chip? And you seem a little, I don't know. There's something in here too about the way you talk about the puppy that seems like you kind of think there's this linear comparison. There's this analog to a puppy like a child. He may have concerns about if you're mature enough to handle motherhood. The problem is with that conversation is you may hear things you don't want to hear, and he knows it, and he knows how you're going to react. Just like you said, you're going to get upset. You're going to argue for a bit. You're going to run off and leave, take the dog for a walk, and then you're going to come back, and it's going to be awkward. You're going to ignore him, give him the cold shoulder. I mean, that is not behavior that is conducive to somebody telling you something they're already scared of telling you. So, if he doesn't want to really be a father, if he doesn't want to be with somebody who's 175 pounds, if he doesn't think you're mature enough for this, isn't that something you want to know? Because I always hear this. I love the way you start this last paragraph. I love him so much, and we have created a fulfilling life together. Do you? Is it? Because it doesn't sound like it to me. This sounds like what we call attachment to outcome. You've had for over 10 years in your mind now, well, 8, that this ends up with a child, him, and you all being a family. And I don't know if you love him so much as you love the idea of what you think this is going to be. And I see a lot of women do it. Men do it a little bit, but we wake up a little quicker. Women will just totally make up like what the fuck they think this guy is or what he's all about. I get it. It's 3 paragraphs of an 8-year relationship. But let's think about it. What has this guy done to make you think he has any interest in being a father? It sounds to me, if I just take these 3 paragraphs, that he's just gotten comfortable with you. There's things that, he thinks could be improved upon. But, he's just said, hey, to keep the peace, I don't worry about it. I think that, this kind of goes into what Pearl says. Let's go back. Let's go back. You just got married 3 years ago. It sounds like you thought that when he agreed to get married, that meant babies were coming next. And apparently it didn't. So what else could you be wrong about? How many guys in the last 8 years, or let's just say before you got married, so how many guys in that 4 or 5 year period that did want to have children, that did want to be a father, that did look at you and say, that's the woman I want to have children with, that you, as the cliche goes, they're all in your DMs, right? But you chose the guy that even after all this time, what is that? Where does that come from? See, I think this is what Pearl is trying to say, because this is kind of an aspect of what happens, right? Statistically, this woman probably doesn't have a father in her life or didn't grow up with one. And so here she is trying to shoehorn this guy, who sounds a little distant, vague, because it's not even like she says we argued and then he just let me have it and told me I was crazy and he knows see, there's none of that. This is all her talking about her acting out, right? And he sounds like to me just kind of, okay, I'm just gonna take it. Let her walk the dog. Let her ignore me. Blah blah blah. She'll get over it. A lot of guys do this. I don't want to address it head on. Well, because they know it might be the end of the relationship if they say what they really feel and what they really think. It's just a total mess. Recent Sweet, I completely understand your desire to have a child. And I think you have to be open to the idea that you just picked the wrong guy for this. And if this is really what you want, I don't think that this is something you can ignore. He sounds kind of checked out. Has a home gym junkie when he's home and isn't playing video games. Y'all have different work schedules. It almost sounds like you guys are roommates. It really does. This does not sound like a fun relationship. Bringing a child into this is something that I would encourage you to seriously think about, because this may not end up well. Nobody is really the asshole in this situation. I think this is just something that probably, everybody wanted what they wanted, and nobody wanted to ask the hard questions. It's kind of like when you go to a car lot, every car you look at, the salesman is going to tell you is perfect for you. And you can't go in with that attitude. You can't go in there like, you got to know what you want. You got to know what your needs are. Are you going to be towing a boat? Do you need something to fit 5 kids in the back? Or do you need something good on gas? Right? You got to go in there knowing what you know. Knowing what you need. And maybe you didn't have the clearest view of that when you were younger, but definitely before you got married, you should have had this conversation, because it sounds like you really did expect marriage to lead to children, and that should have been a deal breaker. So, it's one of those situations where, you might end up having to do a reboot. You're still young-ish. You're 30, You sound a lot like the person that I was talking about that came to me with a similar situation. I can tell you how that situation ended, but it'd just be an anecdote. But I'll just say they're not married. She did get a kid out of it, but it wasn't in his heart, and he didn't react well to the pressure. And if you don't have a man excited about being a father, then that ain't the guy. I can tell you that right now. Because it's not an easy job, especially in these days. It's, you have more than half of a chance that you're going to end up divorced and possibly alienated from your child. It takes a lot of balls these days to want to be a father, even in the best circumstances. So, it's not for the faint of heart. All right, guys. Well, I'm gonna wrap this up. I went a little longer than I planned on, but apparently I'm supposed to be giving content, so I don't really worry about this channel a lot. I just kind of have fun. Hopefully somebody gets something out of this. Somebody likes hearing my voice. Somebody likes something. Maybe one day this will turn into something a little bit more noteworthy. But that's all I got to say today. And I'm planning on doing some more other topics, like maybe less cultural or societal, like how to be a private investigator, or I don't know, how to learn to hunt deer. That's something I've done over the last few years that I've learned, and I love sharing like my process of learning and how I've learned things. That doesn't make me an expert. I just like sharing how I've come to learn and come to understand, and how I've gotten information and become better at things, because it's kind of what happens. I think it's kind of a guy thing. We just kind of fixate on something and we just want to learn how to do it really well. And so, reach out to me on social media. You can always reach out on the Reddit, Ask Uncle Jonathan. I think that'd be a good place to start asking questions. Even if I don't address it in a podcast, maybe I'll respond to you there on the board. Twitter. What is it on Twitter? Yeah. I know I looked up at the beginning of the show. I'll write this out on a piece of paper. On Twitter, it's Uncle Jonathan TV. And if you want to reach out to me privately, email me, Uncle Jonathan. What is it on Gmail? My Gmail address is, let's see here. Uncle Jonathan. Maybe? No? I'm sorry. I still got this new computer here. And I think it's, I don't want to give you guys the wrong information. I'm having to do all this stuff. Nobody believes on me. Turn off your TVs. Turn off your computers when there's a lightning storm, which was crazy. That thing sounded like a lightning. It sounded like a whip. Somebody cracking a bullwhip when it went off. It was so loud I didn't even think it was lightning, even though there was lightning going around. I honestly thought it was it sounded like something exploded. Honestly, it sounded like a bullwhip, just a really loud one going off. So, all right. Well, no Gmail for right now. I can't find the exact address, but Uncle Jonathan TV, Jonathan spelled Jonathan, not none of those weird spellings, just like it is in the Bible, or Ask Uncle Jonathan on Reddit. So y'all just reach out to me on one of those two ways. I want to build those channels anyways. And then later I will give you guys, here we go. The email is Uncle Jonathan Show. That's the one. UncleJonathanShow@gmail.com. Apparently there's a lot more Uncle Jonathans out there on Gmail. But there we are. All right. So anyways, hope you guys have a good one. Have a great week. Have a great day. Have a great night. Don't take shit too seriously. And remember, if you can't figure it out, just ask your Uncle Jonathan. I will be here. I will light a cigar, and I will set you straight. Good night.